there's some good news in it. The visitor numbers are back up, right?
There's a lot of good news. Yeah, total visitors last summer was higher than what we saw in 2019. So you look from April to September, there's an incredible amount of activity in downtown Seattle. And the rest of the year is a little softer from where we were in 2019. So it's sort of the tale of two seasons. And we got more people living downtown than we ever have before. So there's a lot of good news. There's also, some challenges as well.
Can you follow up on that? Okay, so back to on the tourist front, which is great news. And cruise ships certainly are helping that a lot, and just people getting out and about. You've got the tourists back. Why are we seeing the increase in number of people who are actually living downtown?
Because so many people want to be where you've got arts and culture and it's walkable, and you got music and food, and you got a great train system and sports, and you got a new waterfront now. So it's not for everybody, but there's 110,000 people that want to live in the heart of the city and have access to all of that. And many don't have to own a car, and you can walk. I've lived downtown and raised my kids downtown for the last 12 years, and I enjoy a lot of those conveniences. And so we lost a couple thousand people through the COVID years, but we gained them back plus many more. And today, a record number of people living downtown. 1 in 8 Seattleites call downtown Seattle home.
You mentioned challenges. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, what we're not seeing is job growth. And that's been true the last 4 years. We're losing jobs in downtown Seattle. And, over the last 20, the 15 or so prior to the pandemic, we had just record level of job growth. We were outpacing most downtowns around the country. That's not been true the last 4 years. And we see a lot of job growth across the lake in Bellevue. And I'm not rooting against Bellevue by any means, but I'm certainly rooting for Seattle and sort of sounding the alarm here that we are not attractive right now to employers that are growing and expanding within the region. They're picking the east side of the lake, not the west side of the lake. And that has significant consequences and impacts to the commercial office values in downtown. Top 10 buildings by value in downtown are worth less than half of what they were just 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. So that property tax burden that was carried by commercial buildings in downtown for so many years is now being shifted to residents within the city of Seattle, but also small businesses who pick up a portion of the property tax in their triple net leases. So we have to be more competitive and recognize that companies have choices on where they want to grow, locate, and there's great reasons to be here. But right now, the tax structure is creating a situation where Seattle's an outlier and people are making other choices.
You guys are listening to the voice of John Scholes here on the Gee and Ursula Show. You're keyed in on downtown, and you just said talk about some things that maybe we don't know about, maybe some of the things that maybe you say in these private rooms. Give us 3 things that Seattle could do right now to get people starting to choose and pick the west side of the lake.
I think it first starts with the tone and tenor of city officials, to business, to employers. We value you. We want you here. We want to make downtown Seattle, whether you're a retailer, a restaurant, or a large employer, a medium employer, we want to make it easy for you to locate and grow here. We value you here. And that's not been the message over, many years in our city. We have to be more upfront about that. We need better predictability. I mean, it seems like every other day you pick up a news story and there's a new tax or a tax that was recently raised that they want to make higher, or a new regulation. And so there's not great predictability. There hasn't been over the last decade for doing business in downtown Seattle. And the dollars and cents matter too. It is much more expensive to locate a job in downtown Seattle than it is in downtown Bellevue. We have a significant payroll tax that was put in place 4 years ago and increased. We have increases in the B&O tax on large employers in our city. So we become a tax outlier in our region, and people are making other choices. And so those are 3 areas of focus that I think would be helpful to locating more jobs in our city and making sure the employers that are here continue to grow. I don't believe we need more business taxes. What we need are more businesses in Seattle paying taxes. That's how we grow the tax base. And right now, the tax base is at risk because we have commercial values eroding and we have jobs being located across the lake.
So specifically, as the Downtown Seattle Association's CEO, your request, or if you're making any demands, would it be to repeal some of these taxes that that you have mentioned? I mean, what would be on the priority list that this would make an immediate impact and stop other businesses from going to Bellevue? What is that?
Yes, absolutely. And because in the long run, that's how we grow the tax base, not by sending jobs and companies elsewhere. If you remember 4 years ago, the city council leaders that proposed these payroll taxes called them the Jumpstart tax.
Yes.
It was the Jumpstart initiative. And what it's done is jumpstarted Bellevue's economy, not Seattle's.
Oof.
So the writing's on the wall that these taxes are driving investment, driving job growth outside of our city, which at the end of the day results in a net loss of tax revenue. And we've also shifted the tax burden, as I noted earlier. And these taxes were also billed as progressive revenue, right? The big companies are going to pay. Well, if the commercial values of office buildings are declining, the residents, the small businesses are picking up the tab because we rely on our property tax system to fund so much of our public services. So there's an effect happening here that I don't think was intended by those who authored these taxes, but was certainly predicted by us and others that said, if you make yourself an outlier in the region, people are going to make other decisions on where they want to locate and grow.
Do you think that, well, first of all, I don't think Ursula and I disagree with anything that you just said. That was probably the most common sense statement that's been said on our airwaves today. Do you think the powers that be, the people that are running the city of Seattle, the decision makers, do you think that they hear what you're saying and are like, you know what, John, you're right?
Well, we'll see. I do appreciate the comments the mayor made in her State of the City speech back in early February. I attended that. She, called out the business community and employers, and for the taxes they invest in our city, for their philanthropic commitments. She said, I value you. I want to work with you. I think those were important messages and important tone setting. At our State of Downtown event in March, she noted that Seattle's become an outlier when it comes to its tax structure in the region. And she has concerns about jobs leaving our city and recognized and acknowledged that jobs have left our city. And Bellevue has grown their employment over these last 4 years when Seattle has declined. So I think she's sent some important signals. And the fact that she's asking her departments for 5 to 10% cuts to the city budget to deal with their overspending, I think is the right approach. But time will tell. And we've made a lot of progress downtown, but this progress is tenuous. There's a lot of things going in the right direction. Some new retail coming in. Barnes & Noble is coming back and reopening next week in downtown Seattle. So there's a lot to celebrate. But we are in a different period than we were for the last 15 or so years when Amazon grew at this record rate and we had tower cranes all throughout our downtown. We are not attracting the investment and job growth that we once were. And that's a situation that causes me concern. I think should cause our city leaders concern as well.
John, a lot of companies have settled into hybrid or remote work. We just were talking to the King County executive. King County employees are just going back to 3 days a week, and many are complaining about that. Do you think Seattle just has too much space, office space, for our new reality?
We do have a new reality, but Bellevue's dealing with those same realities too.
Absolutely.
So, the hybrid work affects Bellevue, and the shifts in the tech economy and layoffs affect Bellevue. So we have a pretty good control group across the lake. So I don't hang all of these challenges we're facing in Seattle on the tax structure, but when I look at what's happening across the lake, they're dealing with all of these same underlying issues that are facing downtowns across the country and across the world coming out of COVID. So, yeah, that's a part of it. I don't ascribe all of the responsibility and impact to hybrid work and shifts in the tech economy for why jobs in Seattle are declining and not growing.
One of the things, I was just in downtown Bellevue. I took light rail over to downtown Bellevue and walked to Bell Square. And one of the things that Bellevue doesn't deal with is this idea of lack of safety, or this perception that there's a lot of crime there. That does still come up in surveys about downtown Seattle. Even if crime stats are improving, do people feel comfortable downtown?
Perception matters, and there's no doubt that I think many, especially if you haven't visited downtown or you're not spending a lot of time here, you sort of have a hangover from what you saw in the headlines and on the news and in images, from 5 or 6 years ago, which in a lot of ways was just, complete chaos and suffering on our streets, and not a lot of people doing anything about it. We're not there today, and we've made a lot of progress. Crime is down. We have fewer people in need, but it's not good enough. And we need to intervene more with folks that continue to struggle with substance use, that are continuing to wake up on the sidewalk. It's not good enough. And I commend the mayor for the leadership she's showing to say we need to create more places for people to be inside and get people off the street, get them the services and help that they need. And we have to move with a great sense of urgency there. So something we're working with her and her administration on. But you're right. If people don't first both believe and feel and will know that they will be safe, they make other choices on where they want to be. Cities, downtowns have never worked if you haven't achieved those things first. So we've got to stay laser focused. It's got to be job number one. Thankfully, we're going in the right direction. Got a lot more police coming to our streets, and we also need to create a lot more places for people to come inside to give them the help they deserve and that they need.
John, I don't have a list in front of me, and we're talking about substance abuse issues and things like that, and there's this huge glorification of Bellevue. How many treatment centers are in Bellevue as opposed to in Seattle? And you don't have to answer this. I just want to know sometimes.
This is the truth, though.
I just want to know sometimes when everybody's glowing about, oh my gosh, Bellevue's so great. Bellevue's so awesome. But can you compare how many treatment centers are in Seattle compared to in Bellevue? Because when folks get a drug addiction problem in Bellevue, for some reason they slide on over to the west side to get some treatment services.
So true.
Huh.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, Seattle has, shouldered the responsibility for the region and downtown within the city for treatment in our county hospital and our regional jail and emergency shelter and low-income housing. And we need the entire county and region to step up. I do credit Bellevue. They have opened a men's shelter. Plymouth Housing opened a project there not too long ago. There is a mental health crisis facility in Kirkland that recently opened. So I think we're moving in the right direction, but Seattle continues to, shoulder a lot of the responsibility for those critical services, which no doubt has an impact on our street environment and what people see and experience in our city.
Now, John, I was with my partner, Ernie from Kent, on Sunday, and one of the things that he talked about, and it's probably the number one thing that people talk about, and I want to know if you got some pull around there. See, in Bellevue, everybody always talk about Bellevue and how great it is, but one of the advantages that Bellevue has is when they pull up over to Bellevue is the parking situation. You know what I'm saying? You can find some free parking, and so a lot of people want to pull up to Seattle and go do some things, but they're like, oh man, the way my bank account is set up and gas and things like that, it's going to cost me $77 to park for 5 minutes. What can we do in the parking, John?
So we got a lot of it, both on the street and off street. Yeah, you're right. Some of it costs more than what we'd like.
Yeah.
One hot tip for you is, Amazon, the biggest employer downtown, in their new garages north of Stewart, it's free on the weekends and evenings. So after, I think it's 5 o'clock on the weekdays, you get free parking downtown.
Didn't know that.
Best kept secrets.
Didn't know that.
Robin Puyallup just texted in. I was going to ask you that question about parking. He said he saw it on TikTok. Yeah. That needs to be shouted from the rooftops.
You don't even need to be a Prime member, as I understand it. I think that's open to everybody. And you're 3-4 blocks from Nordstrom. You're 3-4 blocks to the north of Nordstrom in that garage. So there are options. And thankfully, we got a lot of other ways to get down here, too, besides driving your car. And, I know
Light
that
rail
needs to be a choice for many.
Yeah.
But you can get a train every 5 minutes from, any station north of downtown right now. And every 8 minutes, I think it is now, across the lake. So thankfully, there's a lot more ways to get here than there was just a few weeks ago, and certainly more than 5 years ago.